Hi, and welcome to the first episode of my knitting podcast. My name is Priya. I live in New York, and I love to knit. This is actually my fourth attempt at filming a knitting podcast, and probably my 15th attempt at filming this intro, because I felt like I kept on saying that I was knitting a podcast. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm hoping this attempt is the final one, and I'm just going to stick with it and edit out all the issues once I'm done filming. As I was saying before, this is my fourth attempt at filming a podcast and my second attempt at knitting this very one. I actually filmed this yesterday, and I realized I really did not like the way that I was talking about things. I even forgot one of my finished objects. So I'm just hoping this one's overall better. This is my cat baby. She's very sweet and she likes to walk around, so you'll probably see her a lot. And that's pretty much all I had to say about this intro. So I'm just gonna get started. For the record, it is January 5th today, 2025. And I guess I'll just start talking about the sweater I'm wearing that I finished around Thanksgiving time. So that was late November. So maybe I'll just cover everything I've knitted since then. So yeah, anyway, what I'm wearing right now is the Stockholm sweater by petiteknit. I knit this using 2 strands of rowan kidsilk haze in the colorway jelly. I'll try to make sure that I cover all the important details of it. Pretty much knitted it to pattern. I knitted it, I believe, in the second size. This is actually my third Stockholm sweater. The other 2 I had knitted were the Stockholm sweater V-neck, and this is my first one with this crew neck detail, which I really enjoy. I actually think I knitted this on a size too large. I think that it called for a 3mm needle, and I accidentally knit it using the US 3mm. No, the US 3 needle, which is 3.25mm. But I still really enjoy how it came out. I love the folded over detail. I just, for collars like this, if it's not like a raglan and I'm not starting out with the collar, it's kind of added on to the body of the sweater, I like to sew the collar down rather than pick up and cast off. I just feel like it ends up being more stretchy and ends up being able to fit over my head when I'm wearing it better. But yeah, I really love how this turned out. I really enjoy the fit. I feel like it's a little bit, I don't know if like masculine is the right word, but I just like how casual and loose it feels, but it's also knitted using 2 strands of mohair, so it's a little bit elevated in that way too. It can really be dressed up and dressed down. And going into the yarn specs, like I said before, this is knit using rowan kidsilk haze, which is a very expensive mohair. Probably the most expensive mohair, like commercially dyed mohair that I've ever used. I say that and I don't even think I've used hand-dyed mohair. They had a $100 Visa gift card for completing a survey at work, and of course I decided to spend it on yarn, so that is what purchased the yarn for the sweater. The majority of the yarn, that is. I still had to buy another skein myself to finish it, and I just think it's a really beautiful color. It's the colorway jelly, like I said before. It's a nice juicy green color, and it's just really beautiful. It's really, really soft. I don't think I'm someone who's particularly sensitive to mohair, but it that being said, I find it to be really comfortable. I usually, like, you can see I'm wearing a shirt underneath this. I'm wearing a long sleeve Uniqlo heat tech shirt because it's about 30 degrees outside today. But even wearing this with just like a tank top underneath, I'm still very comfortable. It has shed quite a bit. Like, I'm wearing leggings right now, black leggings, and I see fuzz and cat hair all over them, which is fun. But I really enjoy it. I've worn this a ton since I finished it. It's probably due for a wash, like right now, which is something I should do. But yeah, I really like it. I see myself just wearing this for the rest of my life, honestly, for as long as I can fit into it. Really into these shades of green right now, and I'm very happy with how this sweater turned out. It might not seem like I am because this is my like 4th time talking about this sweater, but I am very excited about it and I wear it a ton. So moving on to my next finished object that I want to talk about. This is the Step by Step sweater by Handmade by Florence, or Florence Miller. This pattern is a free pattern on Ravelry as well as on YouTube. She has a whole video going through all the steps of the sweater, which is why it's called the Step by Step sweater. It is a very beginner-friendly pattern. It is just super well written, super well explained. I knit the second size, I believe size B in it, and it calls for 5.5 millimeter needles and 4.5 millimeter needles for the ribbing. My cat is distracting me. I'm so sorry. She's about to make her way over here. So yeah, I followed this pattern exactly. I decided to do the optional short row shaping that she had included in the pattern because I'm pretty comfortable with short row shaping at this point. And given that this is a raglan style sweater, I thought it was important to add in if I wanted it to fit the way that I wanted it to. There is, although there is short row shaping, it is pretty minimal at the same time. So I have this length of yarn that I haven't sewn in, so I'm able to tell the front from the back when I want to wear it. And I finished this around the same time that I finished this sweater, and I have worn this a ton. And this sweater is also definitely in need of a wash. So I'll probably wash these when I'm done filming. But yeah, I guess in terms of the pattern, there's nothing more to say than what I've already said. And again, this is a free pattern, so you can just go and take a look at it yourself if you're interested. I would definitely recommend it, especially if you haven't done short rows before and you're looking for a simple pattern to try out that skill, or just if you have some really beautiful yarn and you want it to shine through on a simple sweater construction. Which brings me into the yarn that I used. I use Noro Haunui silk, which is a single ply silk and Haunui wool blend. I believe Haunui wool is a wool from New Zealand, and the wool used in this yarn is raw wool, it hasn't been dyed, and so this brown color that comes through is the natural color of the wool on the sheep, which is really fun. And the color variegation is due to the silk and the wool spinning process. It's a really, really beautiful yarn. It is on the more expensive side for sure, but it comes in 200 gram skeins, as a lot of Noro yarns. Noro yarns tend to be on the more expensive side, but at the same time they come in large skeins. So then when you're dividing it by however much you need to divide it by to get to 50 grams, it is more of a reasonable price if you think about it that way. That's me trying to justify this. But it's just super beautiful. It's super comfortable, super soft. And again, like I said, it is single ply and very soft, so it has started pilling quite a bit, as you can see over there. And I have worn this a ton, and I intend to continue wearing it a ton. It's just such a great simple sweater, but also just so beautiful to look at. And I have nothing but good things to say about both the pattern and the yarn. I followed the, like I said, the short row shaping. She gives 2 options for the neckline, either a folded over neckline or more of a funnel neck. And I did the folded over neck, like I said. I'm a fan of them. And yeah, I think that's all there is to say about this sweater. I love it. I love it a lot. I don't even know which one I like more. They're both beautiful. So the next 2 finished objects I want to talk about are gift knits that I don't have with myself right now. So I'll try to insert pictures wherever I can. The first one I want to talk about is probably the lesser exciting of the 2. I don't know if that's correct grammar, but it is an Oslo hat that I knitted for my dad for his birthday, which was on New Year's Eve. I knit this hat using Cascade 220 superwash. So I had actually knitted an Oslo hat for my dad last year using Knitting for Olive heavy merino. And my dad wore it quite a bit, but found that it was a little itchy for his head because he does not have a lot of hair on his head, so the wool was just irritating his scalp a lot. So I decided to give that one to my brother-in-law, who will hopefully be a little bit less sensitive to wool on his head, and I knit my dad a new Oslo hat using a superwash yarn, which I was hoping would be a bit softer because it's treated, so it's not as woolly feeling. And also it's just I feel like a really good yarn for gift knits because it's washable. And I'd actually knit a hat for my 2-year-old niece using that same yarn in a different color before. So I just had I feel like it's a pretty good yarn to knit a hat with. It's soft but still warm. It's machine washable. The yarn is pretty affordable, so decided to go with this for my dad's second Oslo hat. I knit the men's size for him, and I used the Cascades 220 superwash in the navy blue color. I believe the 220 is a worsted weight yarn, and the Oslo hat pattern calls for a DK weight, but it calls for Sunday held double or double Sunday. But I still I use the Knitting for Olive heavy merino, which is a worsted weight yarn, pretty light worsted weight yarn, and I think it turned out fine. It's just a denser fabric. That being said, I don't know if it's a tensioning issue or what, but I feel as though whenever I knit Oslo hats, they come out kind of tight. So I did get the hat to my dad unblocked because I was a little bit stressed for time, and it was a bit snug on his head, like actually very snug. But I told him to give it a wash, and I'm hoping that it stretched out quite a bit. Also, given that it's super wash. But that's just an issue I've had even with an Oslo hat that I wear myself basically every day in the winter. I knit the woman's size hat for myself using Sandnes garn double Sunday, so the yarn that I believe was recommended, and it's still very snug to the point where when I take it off I have like lines on my head from the stitches. So it just might be a me issue. I know that the Oslo hat mohair edition has more sizes available than the regular Oslo hat, but I just don't want to purchase it personally. If I already have the regular Oslo hat pattern, I think that one way of going about dealing with sizing is just thinking about how the number of stitches you need to cast on needs to be divisible by, and I think as long as that's the case, it'll be fine. So maybe for my next Oslo hat, if I ever need to knit one, maybe I'll try that out to make sure it fits better. But yeah, I don't think there's much else to say. There's tons of people that have talked about the Oslo hat before. So going into the next finished object, I knit my mom a pair of petal drop socks by Florence Miller, and they're just so beautiful. I knit them using a hand-dyed yarn that I bought at Nitty City, and unfortunately I had thrown out the label before realizing what I was doing, so I don't have the yarn name off the top of my head. But it's a really beautiful, like, periwinkle blue kind of color. The petal drop sock pattern has a lace motif all over the front of the sock, and it looks so intricate, and it's actually the second pair of socks that I've ever knit. I'm just getting into sock knitting, and I found it to be so easy to follow. Similarly to the step-by-step sweater, Florence has a whole video tutorial on YouTube for the petal drop sock pattern, so I would definitely recommend checking that out. I knit the second size for my mom, who's about a 9.5 shoe size, and they fit her pretty well, it seems. I mean, I think socks are supposed to fit kind of snug, so I was a little bit worried that they'd be a little bit too big, but they seem to fit her pretty well, so I'm very happy with that, and I'm excited to knit myself a pair one day when I get through all of these current whips that I have, which are a lot. So I think that's all I have to say about that pattern. So moving on to my final finished object, which is honestly probably not even, I'm considering it a finished object even though it's not 100% finished. And this is the Olga jacket by petiteknit. I completely, when I filmed this podcast yesterday, I completely forgot about this, so I'm very glad that I remembered it for this one, but I don't even know how this podcast is going to turn out, to be honest. So yeah, this is the Olga jacket by petiteknit. It is a striped drop-down sleeve cardigan. I really like the stripe details on the back. This was my first time doing short row shaping with stripes, and it was pretty easy. I just really enjoy it. I think it looks so clean, so beautiful, and there is a 1x1 rib button band as well as a collar. And I know some people have feelings about rib button bands, but I think it's just a nice detail on this. I think a double knitted one would also look very nice, but I just think maybe perhaps because I used such a dark color that I'm okay with the rib pattern. One thing I wanted to point out is the ribbing at the sleeves and at the hem also continue the stripe pattern, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't know if I consider this 100% finished because I haven't added on buttons yet. I'm actually waiting for buttons to come in the mail. I ordered them off of Etsy. I believe that the Olga jacket recommends, or her sample was knit using sandnes garn pure gynt, which is a great yarn, but I just didn't have it. And I actually had, so I knit this using sandnes garn double Sunday and Knitting for Olive merino held double. And The Knitting for Olive Merino I had in my stash already. This is actually in the colorway. This sweater looks black and white, but when you look up close, it's actually like light pink and dark blue. There's my jogs right there. Sorry about that. So yeah, I actually had a ton of this merino in my stash. It is the Knitting for Olive Merino in the colorway Ballerina. And I had it in my stash because I had plans to knit the Darling wrap, I believe, by Knitting for Olive, which is like a really pretty wrap cardigan. And I thought that it would be really on the nose to knit it in the ballerina color. But the more I thought about it, the more I just didn't really like this light pink color on myself. I just don't think it's one that suits my skin tone, perhaps, or just like my personal style very well. So I had a bunch of this yarn sitting around with nothing to do with it. And like I mentioned before, I knitted my dad a new Oslo hat, and I was thinking of I was going to knit him the Oslo hat using the double Sunday, because I heard that was a great hat, a great yarn for hats. But then I just thought a superwash might be the best way to go for my dad. So I also had this very, very dark black blue double Sunday by Sandnes garn sitting around. This colorway, I believe, is Sailor in the Dark by it's the Sandnes garn petiteknit collab color. And when I thought about it, I really, really like dark blue and pink together, even though these are kind of like the darkest blue ever and the lightest pink ever. I just really like that color combination, and I thought, why not knit the Olga jacket with it? And I knit a swatch, and it was completely on gauge. So went ahead and knit this, and I'm really liking how it turned out. I haven't worn it yet, obviously, because I'm still waiting on the buttons, but it seems like it's going to be a really cozy, really, really soft cardigan. And I think it has kind of a preppy look to it because of the stripes and the colors of the stripes. So I'm excited to wear it with maxi skirts, and actually got, some people might hate the concept of this, but actually got a denim pleated maxi, or maybe it's just, I think it's a maxi skirt. It's kind of like mid-calf from Aritzia, but I got off Depop, and I think it would look really, really cute with this sweater. I thought I would struggle with styling a sweater like this, but I think it'll be a lot of fun to think of outfits to wear with it. So yeah, this is my Olga jacket by petiteknit. It has a lot of cat hair on it, so that's just life with baby, you know. Hello, I am back. I needed to reheat my coffee, so I just decided to take a little break and do that between my finished objects and my whips. It's a little bit too hot right now. I am ready to go into my whips. The first one I'm going to start with is pretty simple, and it's just sitting right there, so I'm going to breeze through it real quick. This is a simple vanilla sock that I'm knitting for my boyfriend as a little holiday present. Obviously a very late holiday present, but neither him nor I celebrate Christmas, so it's just a little gift for him. I am knitting it using Cascade Heritage sock yarn in the colorway Pine, which is a really beautiful deep green color, because green is his favorite color and the Jets are his favorite football team, and this is similar to Jets green. I am knitting a 2x2 rib cuff in just a regular vanilla sock. It's kind of weird looking, but when he tried it on, it looked fine. This is just 72 stitches. I'm pretty behind on it, and I just need to work through the sock and then cast on the other sock and work through that sock, and then he'll have a pair of hand-knitted socks. my third pair of socks ever. My next whip is going to be a little bit difficult to show. Sorry for the clanking. This is the Solene cardigan by Moreca Knit. I am currently on the double knitted edge, which is why it's so difficult to show, but this is what I have so far. This cardigan is a tie front cardigan. Originally, the pattern has I-cord ties in the front, but I'm going to modify it to have double knitted ties, which is going to be so fun for me because I'm having such a great time doing this double knitted edge. And I'm clearly joking, I'm not having a good time, but I need this finished object so bad. It's so beautiful. I'd actually posted on my Instagram story a while ago saying that I needed a black cardigan. I was really interested in knitting myself something similar to this cardigan by the brand Deji Studios, which was a super oversized robe-like cardigan with double knit ties at the front, 2 double knit ties. And a few people had messaged me telling me to look into the Solene pattern, the Solene cardigan pattern. And at first I wasn't too sure because I thought that the cardigan was a little bit more fitted than I wanted, and I really wanted double knit ties. But I just decided to buy the pattern anyway. And I'm glad I did because there is just so much shoulder and back shaping. There's a lot of short rows. It's very well thought out. I think it's going to fit me so well. And it's not something that I would have been able to come up with myself, you know? So I'm really enjoying knitting this pattern, aside from the double knit, the sides, which has nothing to do with the way the pattern's written. It's just a feature of the pattern that I do want. So this is my first Moreca knit pattern, and I think it's really great. I am really interested in knitting more of her patterns. Like, I believe the Charlie pullover, or I think it's called the Charlie pullover. It's the polo neck kind of sweater. It looks really, really pretty. I like how she did the collar, so I'm interested in knitting that one as well one day, but this is the first Moreca knit pattern I've ever done. I am knitting this using, again, Cascade 220, but the non-superwash version, and then 1 strand of isager silk mohair. This is in the colorway Jet, and then this is just black. I chose to go with Jet versus the solid black color of this yarn. As you can see, this one's a bit more like gray, or just not a super like dark black. Just because I find that because I have black hair and darker features, sometimes wearing a full solid black sweater just feels like I'm being swallowed by the color black, which is not necessarily, I just feel like as though it doesn't really complement my features that well. Although I will say there are people with similar features to me that do look really good in black, so I don't know, maybe it's a personal style thing. I'm really enjoying how this fabric is knitting up. I think it is really, really beautiful, really soft. I do enjoy the subtle, I don't want to say marling, but like it's just not a completely solid black color, you know, maybe the tonality of the black in the sweater. I think it's going to be a really beautiful finished object and be such a great addition to my wardrobe if I can finally just get through the double knitting, because it's killing me. It's probably going to take me a month to get through. But yeah, that's all I had to say about this sweater. My next whip is the Tulip loop roll neck by Otherloops. This is an all over cabled textured pattern, knit in Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino and Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair. The original sample, or at least one of them, was knit using this yarn combination, and I have this in my stash in this really pretty green color, kind of similar to what I'm wearing right now. And this is the colorway Pea Shoots. I thought it would look really, really cute and kind of springy. I don't know how much I'll be able to wear this in the spring because it's obviously going to be a very warm, very woolly, large sweater. But I think it'll look really good in like early March, perhaps. St. Patrick's Day, maybe. But anyway, so yeah, like I said, this is a completely textured cabled sweater. This is actually the second cabled sweater that I've ever knit. First one being sweater number 15 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, which is a much more simple cable pattern than this one. The interesting thing about both these patterns, like both sweater number 15 and this pattern, is that neither of them are charted. The instructions are kind of just written out row by row. Since that's my only experience with knitting cable patterns, I don't know whether that's easier to comprehend or harder to comprehend, but it seemed easy enough. Okay, apologies. I ran out of storage space on my phone and had to delete quite a bit. Hopefully I'll be fine from now on. But as I was saying, I was having a bit of an issue comprehending the instructions in the pattern and where to put the stitch markers that were kind of demarcating where each thing had to happen. So basically, like, this is not directly from the pattern, but for example, it was like knit up to stitch marker 1 and slip marker increase, slip marker, you know, stuff like that. And the instructions on where to place markers just did not make sense to me. And I don't know if other people had that same problem, but given that this is a pretty new pattern, there weren't that many comments on the Ravelry page. So yeah, the way that I got around that was just referencing the pattern pictures and seeing where each cable thing had to happen, and having that kind of experience with knitting helped me out a lot with that. So yeah, that being said, I don't know if I would recommend this for a beginner, but if you're pretty confident in your pattern comprehension skills, maybe more so confident in being able to read stitches, then yeah, I would recommend this. So yeah, it's a tulip loop sweater because these cables look like little tulips, which is really cute. This is also kind of taking me a while to get through, but I am nearing the end of the body, thank goodness. And then I'm going to start the roll neck and then do the sleeves. Another feature I'd really like to point out with this pattern is how the back is different than the front, which I think is really cool. I really like this triangle type detail in the back. I think it is really unique and really beautiful. And yeah, I'm excited to have this beautiful green sweater in my wardrobe. The final whip that I have is like barely a whip, but it is another step-by-step sweater handmade by Florence. This is actually the front, and then this is the back. Again, I did the short row shaping, so this is the back. Given that this is a striping yarn, I'm a lot more confident being able to tell the front from the back. But yeah, going to the yarn, this is classic Line Cloud in the colorway 8. This is like the one that you see everywhere on Pinterest. So the story behind this is that this is actually a random leftover skein from another sweater that I had knit before, which is actually the second sweater I think that I'd ever knit. I had knit the Winter's pullover by Ozetta using this yarn, held with a strand of isager mohair, which is the reason why I'm frogging that sweater. I think the sweater is gorgeous. I actually love wearing that sweater whenever I've worn it. It's a drop down, long turtleneck sweater. It's really beautiful. I'm happy every time I wear it, honestly, but I don't love this sweater for a few reasons. And a lot of it has to do with my yarn choice, not the pattern at all. The pattern's great. But yeah, first of all, that's a drop shoulder sweater, so I felt as though the way that the stripes with this self-striping yarn were distributed were very uneven, where there were just like patches of thick stripes, and then they got smaller as I joined in the round, which I wasn't really a fan of. And I feel as though this raglan style sweater, although it won't be perfect, it'll be a little bit more distributed. Another reason is just that, I don't know, obviously I was very new to knitting and like understanding fibers, but I just did not like the fact that I held this with a strand of mohair, because this is a superwash yarn. This is 90% superwash merino and 10% nylon. And I just don't really like the idea of holding mohair with superwash. I know some people do it, which is fine. I just think with this particular yarn, it's just not needed, because this is already a super soft yarn. And I think I just did it because I felt like I had to hold my mohair with everything, when that's not true. Another thing is that the mohair that I used was just like a white mohair, and I did not like, with this beautiful striping yarn, like I did not like the little specks of white everywhere. So I'm actually unraveling that sweater and also trying to separate the mohair from the yarn, which is a long process, but it's actually, unraveling is the worst part. Separating the mohair from the yarn is actually not that bad, again, because it's superwash yarn, so it's not very sticky. But yeah, that's the story behind this sweater. I wanted to knit the step-by-step sweater because, like I said before, I thought it was a really great pattern. I also follow a creator on Instagram who'd post a reel at the end of the year with her favorite knits of 2024, and she had knit this sweater with this yarn, and I just loved how it looked, so I was totally influenced by that. And again, this is like not very much so far. Oh, another thing I want to talk about, like I talked about the short row shaping for my other step-by-step sweater. Obviously with short rows and a self-striping yarn, you're gonna get like this weird thing going on here. But you know what? I actually don't mind it. I totally understand why other people would mind it, but I think it looks fine. There are some instances where I'm like I really did not like this gold color. I really did not like this patch of gray, and it seems like I'm getting all the fun colors now. But that's just how it goes with these self-striping yarns, and I don't care enough to just cut it, and it's just how it goes. It's just a function of the yarn, and I'm sure once the sweater is done in its entirety, I'm going to love how it looks. So yeah, I mean, there isn't much more to say about the pattern. Obviously, yarn, beautiful yarn, very expensive yarn. I'm glad that I'm repurposing an old sweater for this, if I can get around to it. This might be like a long-standing whip, not because the sweater itself takes very long to knit, but because I'm going through so much with unraveling the original sweater. So the final thing I want to talk about, I'm not going to have any acquisitions in this section, or in this podcast. So I'm just going to talk about this as kind of like a future plan, even though I've kind of already started it, but I think it's going to take the back seat while all my other whips are in progress. But yeah, this is the beginnings of a porcelain yoke sweater by leknit. This is knit using sandnes garn, tynn pure gynt, and kidsilk mohair. I actually used the same yarn to knit my sweater number 15 that I mentioned before. And I love this yarn combination. It might be kind of, I a hot take because this is like not the softest yarn, but it's just so nice. Like I'm really, and I love knitting with it. So I'm really excited for this one. I have a lot of this left over from my sweater number 15, so I decided to go ahead with knitting this, and it'll be my first color work project. This is, I think it's the colorway Electric Blue, which is a petiteknit collab color again. This is, I think, I don't know the exact colors. I'll put them in the description, but these are the colors that Lynette used in her sample. And yeah, I was kind of on the fence about whether or not I'd want to knit the porcelain yoke sweater or the regular porcelain sweater, and I'd actually posted on my Instagram story with a poll. And funnily enough, a lot of the people who voted for the yoke sweater were people that I knew in real life and who don't knit, whereas a lot of the people that I connected with through Instagram and don't know in real life and who do knit voted for the regular porcelain sweater. And I don't know where those differences in preferences came from. Maybe the knitters just tend to have a preference for non-circular yoke sweaters because they think a lot more about fit. But yeah, that was just an interesting tidbit. Unfortunately, I decided to go, while the majority of people voted for the regular porcelain sweater, I decided to go with the yoke sweater because although I like the fit of the porcelain sweater better, I'm not a fan of circular yokes and how they fit. But like I said, this is my first colorwork sweater, and I've heard a lot of people talk about how knitting colorwork flat for the porcelain sweater can be kind of horrible. And I don't know if I'm ready to sign up for that. Another reason, actually there are a few reasons. So the second reason is because the sizing of both patterns is very weird. Like, I feel like the circular yoke sweater just seemed to have a better size range than the regular porcelain sweater. Something I didn't like about the porcelain sweater was that the size I feel I would fit into is extra small to small. And I know that I'm not an extra small. I'm more of a small to medium, or at least that's like my preference with sweater fits. So I was just worried that I'm sorry, my cat looks so cute right now. Look at her. She is so funny. Okay, sorry for that interruption. But yeah, that being said, I felt like the size range was just better for the circular yoke sweater. And then the third reason was just because I think I only have enough yarn for the circular yoke sweater and I did not want to buy more yarn, which is why I am not having an acquisition section in this my future plans, because I have way too much yarn in my stash and I am doing I want to call it a low buy, not a no buy, because one caveat for buying yarn is if I absolutely need to finish a sweater and I'm out of yarn, then I will buy one more skate. Otherwise, no new yarn. I am only working from stash for as long as I can. So yeah, that all being said, I do not have an acquisition section for this video. And that's it. So thank you so much for joining me if you did watch this video, and if I did end up editing it and uploading it onto YouTube, who knows if that'll happen. I really appreciate it. Please let me know what you're working on and just anything interesting about you, or doesn't even have to be interesting. I just love connecting with people, especially other knitters and other people who are as excited about knitting and yarn as I am. So yeah, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.